You wake up, phone is already buzzing. Notifications stacked like tiny demand. Messages, group chats, updates you didn't ask for. And somewhere in that quiet first moment of the day, you feel it, that instinct to disappear just a little. Not to vanish forever, just to not be seen yet. So you don't post. You don't reply right away. You don't announce where you are or what you're thinking. And people notice. They might say you're low-key, hard to read, or mysterious. Or maybe they don't say anything, which somehow feels even louder, because choosing privacy over presence isn't just a lifestyle preference anymore. It's a quiet deviation from how we're expected to exist. And here's the interesting part. When you step back from constant visibility, something subtle starts happening inside you. Your psychology shifts, your relationships shift, even your sense of self changes. So what actually happens when you choose privacy over presence? Why does it feel calming for some people and deeply uncomfortable for others? And what kind of person tends to make this choice without fully realizing it? Let's talk about it. There's one type of person who doesn't make an announcement when they leave a social space, online or offline. They just slowly stop showing up. One fewer story, one less comment. Eventually, silence. Not dramatic, not hostile, just quieter. This person often used to be very present. They shared thoughts, reactions, small daily details. But over time, something shifted. Being seen started to feel less like connection and more like performance. Psychologically, this happens when expression becomes externalized, when your inner life starts existing mainly for an audience, even a friendly one. Your mind goes into output mode. You're thinking about how things land, how they look, how they'll be received. That can be energizing until it's not. So choosing privacy becomes a way to reclaim mental ownership. Thoughts get to exist without being optimized. Emotions don't have to be translated into captions. You start feeling like your experiences belong to you again. If this is you, you might notice that your clarity improves when fewer people know what you're doing. You make decisions faster. You feel less fragmented. And interestingly, you don't miss being visible. You miss being understood. There's a difference. Then there's another profile, the person who stays present but selectively invisible. They show up physically, maybe even socially, but they don't broadcast much. They're in the room but not on display. You'll find them listening more than speaking, watching group dynamics unfold, knowing things about others that others don't know about them. They're not hiding out of fear, they're filtering. This tendency often comes from a strong internal world. People like this process experiences deeply before sharing them, if they share them at all. Presence feels draining when it requires immediate response. Privacy gives their thoughts time to ripen. From a psychological angle, this is about control over emotional pacing. When you're constantly present, other people set the rhythm, reply speed, reaction timing, emotional availability. Choosing privacy lets you slow the tempo back down to something your nervous system can handle. If this resonates, you may have noticed something else. People sometimes project onto you. Silence becomes a blank screen. Others assume you're aloof, uninterested, or secretly judging, when really you're just comfortable not narrating yourself. And that's the trade-off. Privacy protects your inner life, but it can make you misunderstood. The question becomes, which cost feels lighter? Now here's a more uncomfortable type, the person who chooses privacy after being overexposed. This person didn't start out private. They shared a lot, maybe too much. Personal struggles, thoughts that were still forming, feelings that hadn't settled yet. And at some point, the feedback started shaping the experience more than the experience itself. When vulnerability gets prematurely socialized, it can backfire. Instead of feeling supported, you feel interpreted, reduced, labeled, and suddenly parts of you don't feel safe being visible anymore. So privacy becomes self-defense. Psychologically, this is a boundary repair mechanism. The mind learns, if I keep this to myself, it stays intact. There's less distortion, less advice you didn't ask for, less emotional leakage. People in this category often struggle with guilt about withdrawing. They worry they're being distant or secretive, but what they're really doing is rebuilding trust with themselves. If this is you, Ask yourself something gently. Are you hiding or are you healing? Because there's a difference. One shrinks you, the other stabilizes you. Then there's the person who chooses privacy not because they're overwhelmed, but because they're grounded. This is the person who doesn't feel the urge to update, explain, or validate their choices. Not out of defiance, just contentment. Their life feels full enough without witnesses. This type often emerges after a period of inner alignment, when your values, routines, and identity stop shifting constantly. You don't need as much external feedback. You already know how you feel. From a psychological standpoint, this reflects a strong internal locus of evaluation. Your sense of worth isn't built from reactions, it's built from coherence. Does your life make sense to you? That becomes the main question. Interestingly, this kind of privacy doesn't feel heavy, it feels light. There's no tension in being unseen because there's no urgency to be seen. But this also changes how you relate to others. Conversations become more intentional. Sharing becomes a choice, not a reflex. You might speak less, but when you do, it's clearer. And finally, there's a quieter, less talked about type, the person who chooses privacy because presence feels like fragmentation. For some people, being constantly available pulls them in too many directions at once. Each message, each interaction, each social cue splits their attention just enough to feel disoriented. Privacy for them is integration. When they reduce visibility, their thoughts line up, their emotions become easier to track, their sense of self feels more continuous instead of scattered across platforms, conversations, and expectations. Psychologically, this connects to how some minds handle stimulation. High cognitive sensitivity doesn't always look like anxiety. Sometimes it looks like selective withdrawal, not to escape life, but to experience it fully. If you're in this category, you might notice that your creativity, focus, or emotional regulation improves when fewer people have access to you. It's not antisocial, it's architectural. You're designing a mental space that functions. Now, here's the twist most people miss. Choosing privacy over presence doesn't mean you value connection less. It often means you value it more, because when presence is constant, it becomes diluted. When everything is shared, nothing feels sacred. Privacy creates contrast. It gives moments weight. It lets connection happen on purpose. But this choice also changes how others respond to you. Some people feel closer, others feel shut out, and that tension can be uncomfortable, especially if you're used to being accessible. So the real psychological question isn't, is privacy good or bad? It's, what are you protecting and what are you allowing in? Because privacy without reflection can turn into isolation, and presence without boundaries can turn into erosion. The healthiest versions of this choice are fluid, intentional. You step back when you need depth. You step forward when you want connection. You don't owe constant access, but you also don't disappear without awareness. So take a moment. Which of these patterns felt familiar? When you choose privacy, does it feel like relief or avoidance? Do you feel more yourself when fewer people are watching? And if this topic landed somewhere personal, maybe quietly, maybe unexpectedly, you're not alone. A lot of people are renegotiating how visible they want to be in a world that equates presence with value. If you want to explore more of these quiet psychological shifts, the ones that don't scream for attention but change everything underneath, you might want to stay here a little longer. And I'm curious, when was the last time you chose privacy on purpose?
And what happened afterward? Maybe nothing dramatic, no confrontation, no announcement, just a subtle change in how you felt inside. A loosening, a steadiness, or maybe a faint discomfort, like you stepped off a stage and suddenly didn't know where to stand. That reaction matters, because what happens after you choose privacy often reveals why you chose it in the first place. Some people feel an almost immediate calm. Their nervous system exhales. They sleep better. Their thoughts stop racing to package themselves for others. This is usually a sign that presence had quietly become a form of pressure. Not obvious pressure, the polite kind, the kind that smiles and says, just checking in, while slowly asking you to be available, responsive, explainable. Other people feel restless when they step back. They keep checking their phone. They wonder if they're being forgotten. If this is you, it doesn't mean privacy was a mistake. It means presence had been doing emotional work for you, regulating loneliness, validating identity, confirming relevance. Psychologically, visibility can function like a mirror. When you remove it, you're left alone with your own reflection. And not everyone is used to that. This is where things get interesting, because when privacy becomes your default, you start noticing how much of modern life is built around performative closeness, quick reactions, public intimacy, shared moments designed to be seen rather than felt. Choosing privacy disrupts that loop. You may notice that some relationships thin out, not because they were fake, but because they were maintained by proximity and updates rather than depth. When the updates stop, so does the illusion of closeness. That can sting quietly, but at the same time, other connections often deepen. Conversations slow down. When you do talk, it's less about catching up and more about actually connecting. Fewer words, more meaning. This shift reveals something subtle about human psychology. Constant presence creates familiarity, but selective presence creates significance. And this is where people often misunderstand those who choose privacy. They assume withdrawal equals disinterest, that silence means judgment, that invisibility is passive-aggressive or emotionally unavailable. In reality, many private people are deeply engaged, just internally. They're thinking, integrating, living their life without narrating it in real time. If this is you, you've probably noticed how strange it feels when someone demands access, when they interpret your boundaries as rejection, when they say things like, "You never tell me anything anymore." That moment forces a choice. Do you explain yourself, or do you let the boundary speak? Psychologically, this is a test of self-trust. Explaining can feel easier. It smooths social friction, but over-explaining can quietly betray your own needs. Letting privacy stand without justification is uncomfortable, but it strengthens your internal authority. And here's a quiet truth. The more aligned you become with yourself, the less you feel compelled to narrate your choices. Privacy becomes less about hiding and more about selecting. Selecting who gets access, selecting when to be seen, selecting which parts of your life are shared and which remain yours alone. This selection process reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as a character in a feed and start experiencing yourself as a person in time. Days feel less chopped up. Emotions unfold naturally instead of being prematurely expressed. And something else happens, something people rarely talk about. Your intuition gets louder. When fewer voices are reacting to your life, you can hear your own responses more clearly. You notice what excites you before it's validated, what drains you before it's normalized, what feels right before it's approved. That's not isolation, that's internal attunement. But of course, privacy isn't a cure-all. There is a shadow side. If privacy becomes a way to avoid vulnerability, it can harden into distance. If you never let yourself be seen, you may start to feel unseen, even when that was your choice. The line between self-protection and self-erasure can be thin. The key psychological difference is intent. Are you choosing privacy to preserve your inner life or to escape relational risk? One expands you, the other shrinks you. And most people move between both at different times. That's normal, human, fluid. So maybe the real insight isn't about choosing privacy instead of presence, but choosing it before presence, giving your experiences time to become yours before offering them to others, letting emotions settle before they're shared, allowing meaning to form internally before it's externalized. In a world that constantly asks, "What are you doing? What are you thinking? What do you have to say?" choosing privacy can be a quiet act of authorship. You decide when the story is ready to be told. So let this land gently. Notice when you feel most yourself, when you're visible or when you're private. Notice which relationships survive without constant updates. Notice whether your silence feels empty or full. And if you're someone who's been slowly stepping back, not disappearing, just becoming more selective, you're not broken. You're responding intelligently to a loud environment. Sometimes
Perhaps the most psychologically healthy move isn't to be more present, it's to be more intentional. So sit with that, and if this reflection felt familiar, maybe even uncomfortably accurate, you might want to explore more of these quiet patterns, the ones that don't announce themselves, but shape who we become. Because not everything meaningful needs to be visible, and not everything private is lonely.